Sound rolling, camera rolling. Welcome to episode 11 of Fitness and Thinking. This is a recap of the first 10 episodes of a podcast centered on 5 pillars of wellness: the physical, mental, social, spiritual/emotional, and financial experiences of being. And over the maybe 6 or 7 hours that we've had of recording so far, there have been insights from researchers, practitioners, coaches, and people who are just living their lives. And I would like to, over the next, I'd say 25 minutes, take you through some of those insights. If you are particularly keen on the sound of one of the topics, just look through the description and then click on the link that you want. There are so many moments over what we've recorded so far that have either changed my life or at least changed my understanding or kind of appreciation of certain things. Let's kick off with the introduction. Episode 1 was a breakdown of why another white man in his 30s is starting a podcast. And if you don't know me, it springs from my experience as PT, level 4 strength and conditioning coach, and practicing online coach who has a master's in psychology, has worked in digital marketing, and has, I guess, over the years built and rebuilt himself physically, mentally, socially, spiritually, emotionally, and financially. And this model comes from when I was studying psychology. Actually, studying psychology was a massive moment in my life as it made me focus on my mental health in a way that I hadn't before. And from a reacclimation of good, functional mental health, I was able to address everything else. That episode, I'd not sat for just 30 minutes and talked to camera ever before. And it really did flow in a way that I didn't expect and haven't experienced. The end of that episode, I introduced some of the creative writing that I'd been up to with Beth. We went to Primavera Music Festival in Barcelona and wrote 3,000 words for her music zine, The Independent. I was torn between reading it word for word and trying to convey the experience that we had. I could have just gone down one route or the other rather than always looking to a side. That was one learning from that episode. Understanding how to better record was something that I also took from that. In episode 2 for Lyrical Fitness, we dusted off 4 of 8 poems that I've written about the human anatomy based on the experiences of one of my mums, one of my favourite books, an illustrated book of anatomy centred on bodybuilding, and also some of my clients. The name to put to the thing completely transformed their understanding but also enjoyment of working out. I bought a couple of them that book to help with it. I have 2 collections of poems out, and I used to put together sets that were 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes long. The idea of having these lines and rhymes to mind and being able to put that out in a way that felt fresh and I think people enjoyed and were just completely off the wall at times, that certainly made me laugh, made the people I care about laugh, and even some of the people that I respect go, "Can you really rhyme Anconius in that way?" In episode 2, hopefully you get a taste for what my creative writing can be like, and also for the fun that you can have with your understanding of the anatomy. Number 3 was with Alex Smith, a senior researcher at the University of Bern. His topic that he brought to the episode, psychopathy in elite sports, is one of many strands that he's interested in as he works towards his PhD. The moments that I particularly enjoyed in that, we discussed a Nike advert that had a really smart marketing team behind it. For a minute and a bit, Willem Dafoe essentially lists the traits of psychopathy, but the imagery used while Willem Dafoe narrates, you have sports stars, you have athletes, you have people that many of us will look up to doing things that many of us might aspire to do or are simply in awe of. But it was psychopathic trait after trait after trait after trait. And from Alex's research, the people who tend towards psychopathy, and it's a spectrum, it's not something that you can be diagnosed with. You can have psychopathic traits, but you can't be diagnosed as a psychopath. Maybe have maladaptive tendencies as a result, so maybe they're more likely to dope or to defraud their teams or governing bodies or to cheat in some way because of their maniacal tendencies to win. And I was fascinated by the notion that we all can be on that spectrum and maybe at times have exhibited those traits. Tolerating pain and maybe seeking pain out. I ran a half marathon in May. It was my first half marathon, and I was in pain while exercising in a way that I've never been before. Hip was tight, opposing knee was tight, ankles had been in bits throughout my training. But as I speak to Jack Martindale about in the 4th episode, there was no way that I was going to stop. I was there to do something. I was absolutely pig-headedly focused on the finish line, and I was going to cross it even if I was going to crawl, just because I'd worked so hard for this thing. Whether that's a sunk cost fallacy, whether that's just discipline, whatever it is, that residing in pain and pushing it in order to achieve a goal isn't necessarily typical in the general population, but it is common in the elite groups that Alex is aware of, both through his own research and in the meta-analyses and studies that he refers to. An amazing episode which worked really well, with Jack Martindale coming in as an elite runner, as somebody who has some of the quickest half marathon and marathon times that I'm aware of personally. He is creative and emotional and social, and I think has intuitively, as a lot of runners that I've met since he suggested that I go to Run Happy Run Club seem to be. I've not come across a group of athletes, a group of practitioners of a sport be so similar in their capacity to talk about things that are bigger than the sport. By which I mean spirituality and emotionality. These are things that I've gotten into on long runs, on Monday nights, on trails in the Peak District, where you're in step with somebody for 20, 30 minutes and you're not sprinting. The aim is to run socially, and we've discussed things like identity and depression and mania and relationships. Monday night, there's this guy who I've gotten on with for a little while, but we really just talked 20, 30 minutes, uphills, downhills, on scraggly ground, jumping over stiles, sun going down, we've got head torches on. It was amazing. Like, there was a proper connection through conversation there, and I wouldn't have been in that position in that run club were it not for Jack. And Jack, through running, has found friendships like this. He's found his own personal goals and ambitions have been ticked off. And in part, it's come from not obsessively programming like bodybuilders might or strength athletes might. The people that I tend to look up to and work with and work out with, they will have block, block, block. But for Jack, he will obviously train for a race, but between times he will go on social runs like this, and he'll spend a lot of time on his feet, which is great for distance running, but is obviously contributing to his zone 2 fitness, his cardiorespiratory fitness, enabling him through having talks with people while being active and maybe getting into the deep stuff to perform in the way that he does. He has, I think, one of the most holistic backgrounds of being an elite athlete that I've come across. For him then to push me to join the run club, that's completely transformed my enjoyment of running to the point where it's something that I'll aim to keep up alongside my bodybuilding goals. And if you were to ask most people who knew me a year ago, when I was 86 kilos and bulking and trying to put on as much muscle as possible, the thought of running and potentially losing muscle, such a bodybuilding take on fitness, I just don't have it anymore. And I absolutely see the value in particularly these social runs and these runs that take you to maybe places in your own city, places just 15, 20 minutes away that you might not have gone to otherwise, physically, geographically, mentally, socially, spiritually. Maybe you've experienced fitness like Jack has. Maybe he's taken it, has inspired you to transform your own understanding of it. Episode 5, Sid Islam, champion bodybuilder and an incredible PT. He was one of the first PTs that I met when I went full-time as a coach. So I was made redundant from my digital marketing job in November 2022, applied to 2 gyms in Sheffield and got jobs at both. And I stuck with one of them, and at that gym met Sid. Sid has a way of teaching both groups and individuals that is really empathetic, supportive, and then will push when people need to be pushed. Now, he absolutely looks like a bodybuilder, but the way that he coaches people is holistic, and the way that he tries to make time for everybody and understands that, you know, particularly for, say, single parents, there isn't a typical schedule that works. As an online coach, I know what it's like to work with single parents at a distance, and I think the flexibility and adaptability of booking in calls rather than being fixed into a gym session on a weeknight, maybe between 4 and 8 o'clock, just might not happen. And Sid, maybe more than other coaches I know, has been that guy to say, well, you know what, if you can't get in until 9 in the evening on a Saturday, then I'll be there. And he's done that to the point of maybe pushing his own experience, his own fitness to a side. What he discusses in that episode is obviously bodybuilding and what that means to him, but then also what it means to be fit and what it means to encourage other people to be fit. And then also how he's since managed to assert his own boundaries and make sure that while he can be there for other people, it doesn't come at the cost of his own mental well-being. I'm really proud of him. He's been a great mate in the fitness space for me. Number 6 with Neil J. He is a senior physio based in London. He grew up in Malaysia, studied in Sheffield, which is how we met, and he has an interest in calisthenics. He's just launched the Cali Physio. So this is physiotherapy for people who are interested in beautiful movement. So if you've ever done a press up, if you've ever done a dip, if you've ever done a squat that's body weight, you're tapping into calisthenics. Now Neil takes this to what might be extreme for many of us, and if you're into calisthenics, is just par for the course. His knowledge and insight on what it's like to be in your body, to have your body move through space and hopefully do it in a way that is more effective, more efficient, beautiful, is phenomenal. He has that from a practitioner's standpoint, from helping other people get back to a baseline, but then also from a coaching standpoint of taking people from a baseline to these extreme movements. He had flashy headlines and was so good at communicating themes of identity and injury, and I think he had maybe similar experiences to me and then was able to add to it in a way that I didn't expect. He had takes on things that blew my mind, and I have gone back to that a couple of times. I've certainly thought about ego with my own training. I'm currently a little bit hunched because I pulled my traps yesterday with pull-ups, and that's a recurrent calisthenics thing for me, is that for whatever reason I just can't get my shoulder in the right place. But I felt something off in my second set and said, look, just go steady in the third. You don't have to prove anything. Within one rep of the third set, yeah, it wasn't good, and I stopped doing the movement. I am sore this morning, but I know that if I'd kept on going, what I'm feeling now could have been a lot worse. So trying to put into practice the things that he said. If the idea of injury, illness and identity is something that you can relate to, episode 9 with Lucas will, I think, add to that as well. Number 7, Belle Stringer. Belle is an assistant manager at a big gym chain, and to see her go from PT to manager and to know what her story was to get to a PT. She's had people question whether she can coach other people as, in her words, a bigger bodied PT. It was incredible to get Belle's take on what it's like to be a woman in the training space, in the gym space, and the way that she broke down topics of kind of gender difficulties to get into the space, how one cycle can affect performance, and her experience of it in terms of always having to perform. She has responsibilities to her clients, but also to classes. Just because she's in a moment with her cycle doesn't mean that she can't not teach, for instance. And the way that she lays out how she handles that was, I think, surprising, but could also be reassuring for other people. The general takes that we had on how to get more people into fitness were reassuring as well. And if you've ever felt like you've fallen off, Belle gives some tips as to how to get back on track. This was an episode that was fun to put together from a PT's perspective, but then also from a managerial sense, and the way that she'll see the gym now in terms of numbers, in terms of ingress and egress, and why we have the trends that we do, people signing up and maybe going missing. Number 8 was with Maddie of Journey On Coaching. Maddie is a life coach and practicing yoga teacher, and she has a mind-body approach to the coaching that she does. Now, obviously that aligns with fitness and thinking. The words that I took from Maddie in that episode were ones that I think we'll talk about in general conversation a fair amount, but the depth that she gave to them transformed my approach to planning and goal setting. Embodying was one word, and I think embody is something that has run through all of the episodes, that lived in experience of all of the things that we've discussed. The word that she says really early on in the episode is alignment. And are you putting time and energy into things that make sense for you? I reflected on this from February to June. I was working on poetry accounts because poetry is something that I used to do, and I would like to have some prominence, some capacity, some income, I guess, from talking, from creatively thinking and writing and communicating it in a way that is engaging. And that obviously comes from sets and reps, from practice. But the material that I was choosing maybe wasn't necessarily original, and it wasn't necessarily speaking to people, and at times it probably was just doing it for the sake of doing it, rather than because I felt it, rather than because I believed in it, rather than because I was aligned with it. And that conversation, as part of Fitness and Thinking, as part of the podcast recording, helped me to feel aligned, helped me to think, you know what, I'm exactly in the right moment in this conversation, in having spoken to Maddie beforehand to see if she'd be interested in coming on, in having spoken with everybody that's come before. It felt like exactly the right thing. And there was a sense of contentment while doing that hopefully you'll have experienced, whether working out or at work, or having the deep conversations with partners, or seeing a sunrise or a sunset, or climbing a mountain, or just that feeling of, yeah, I'm here. And I am happy, I am stressed, I am scared, I am concerned, I am all of these things that I'm feeling, but I'm absolutely in this moment. She tied that into Ikigai, a Japanese word. The concept is about alignment of 4 different values and aims. So what you are passionate about, what you're good at, what you can make money from, and what the world needs. And if you think of these as 4 overlapping circles, whatever's in the middle of it for you should be the thing that you put your energy into. If Ikigai is the placeholder word, then it felt to me that Fitness and Thinking, whether through the newsletter or through the podcast, was my Ikigai. And the financial bit of it, the financial fitness of the model, that would come over time. But the other things, yeah, it absolutely feels that I'm in a moment. And Maddie helped me to feel that. And her experience, her origin story of how she became the life coach, I think is worth a listen. But then also how she follows that up to say that you don't need necessarily the bigger life event to change your life. You know, we don't need the cataclysm. Sometimes it's just a catalyst. Lucas Hines, number 9. Lucas is a philosopher, warrior. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner who has a strong sense of identity and philosophy. The way that he talks about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as not just a sport, but a way of being, about taking a breath and assessing a situation, not exerting yourself in ways that don't make sense. Again, it's this sense of alignment. Lucas knows that when he's in a bind on the mat, putting all of his physical effort into getting out of it might not be the right move, but actually taking a breath, reflecting, assessing, and then figuring out how to move in a way, how to flow in a way to escape the situation and maybe gain an advantage is something that he's seen in other areas of his life. He talks about the ways of learning, and what you might not think as important, or what you might not think as an experience or a learning from one discipline, could actually cross over in an unexpected way. The back end of October, there's an A24 film coming out called The Smashing Machine, based on a UFC fighter, Mark Kerr. Lucas knows the outcome of Mark Kerr's life and that film. I don't. The Rock features in it, and The Rock has a no loss clause in a lot of his contracts, which comes about from him not wanting to cede control or to look like he loses too much in his films. It's this thing about being Giga Chad, super masculine. And I think, again, I don't know the outcome of this documentary, that maybe we'll test the clause in a way that we've not seen from The Rock, and hopefully we'll make a film that's actually memorable. Sidebar, part of the reason why his films aren't good, aren't memorable, is because there aren't stakes. You know, he always wins. And in this documentary, I'm not sure if that will be the case. Lucas is going to be the perfect person to watch that with, and if we could do a take afterwards, I'd be really up for that. Episode number 10, last week's episode with Dr. Maria Belech. She is a research associate and psychedelics in mental health and naturalistic settings. This is her focus. She has a way of speaking technically in neuroscientific terms, and then also colloquially, bringing in a Lady Gaga reference halfway through the conversation, which caught me off guard. She has experience as a mother who has been in mums groups, observing what happens when people give birth at home versus in hospitals, and how maybe there's an altered state tapped into there. We discuss things like the runner's high. We discuss what is a psychedelic and what isn't. It was the first episode that I had to put a caveat on. Conversations like this, I think, can be taken the wrong way, engaging in what is societally illicit. There are moments that we tap into which I think transcend substances, and belief was something that I wanted to ask her about based on her talk, The Science of Psychedelics, and I caught her in Sheffield in July and she spoke so well on the topic that I had, a whiteboard's worth of notes basically to go through with her. And she was able to tie all of these pieces together, put studies, citations behind it, but then also inference and interpolation in a way that I think is uncommon for researchers. And certainly because of her research field, the topic is uncommon, the topic is cutting edge, and the way that she expresses it is fun, involved, and I think entertaining for anybody who has a passing interest in what the mind is capable of. And I think that should be a fairly crisp insight into what we've covered so far. I'll type this up in the newsletter as well. The newsletter comes out every week and usually around the time of the podcast. So whether you like to read, whether you like to watch, whether you like to listen, there should be insights from these pillars for you every single week. And if you can think of a guest or you can think of a topic that you want to cover, that you want to get into, or maybe you want to come on and chat with me, whether it's here or it's over Zoom, we can set that up and I will do my research or even be up for writing with you. This podcast only grows with your interest and involvement. So I don't want to make things that aren't interesting, that aren't worthwhile, that don't add value to your life. Leave comments, leave feedback, leave a 5-star review on Spotify, subscribe on Spotify or YouTube, tell your friends about it. If you can do all of this, it will mean that the channel can grow. It will mean that we can attract the guests that you want to see and hopefully uncover topics that maybe you didn't even realize you were interested in. I have some dream guests on here, and in terms of next guests, we've got more Sheffield Titans. It makes sense while I'm spending more time in the Steel City. And we also have some athletes that are pushing boundaries again in ways that maybe you didn't know they could. I'm really excited to get into the next run of episodes and can't wait to chat with you some more. News have been great. I've been Jack Mann. I'll see you in the next one.